This is a review and installation of the Meso Customs 4-port overhead panel for the 3rd gen Toyota Tacomas. I have a 2021 off-road that has the SOS button on the left. This should also apply to the Tacomas with the sunroof button on the right. I believe everything here should apply to the 6-port version as well. So right off the bat, let me tell you that the reason there are no installation instructions is because Meso Customs has no way to actually install this into your overhead unit. If you notice, there are no tabs, there are no clips, there's no screw holes. There's no way to actually mount this into your overhead unit. This is basically holds 4 buttons with no way to actually mount it. So Meso Customs, I'm a big fan, but this is frankly an embarrassment to sell your customers a product that's unusable in its current state. And while we're talking about negatives, let's go ahead and get those out of the way. This finish on here doesn't match the finish of my overhead unit. It's a lot more coarse and rough than my unit. And mine also has numerous manufacturing flaws. I'm assuming they 3D printed this. And if you notice, there are like 2 lines right here on the side. This column's okay. This column has another big line right there, as well as some little funky things on the sides right there. This column has 3 light lines coming across it, and then this side has 4. 3 of them on the right are really bad, as well as a couple more going across the top. So, some huge manufacturing flaws in this that I'm going to be looking at every single time I look up and see that on my overhead panel. I'm going to see this. I don't know what I'm going to do about that yet. I may try some fine sandpaper and sand this down. It'll destroy the finish, the rough finish on there, but that doesn't match anyway. So the only positive thing I can say about this is that the button holders actually hold the buttons, and that's about it. That's really the only positive thing I can say. Otherwise, I'd give this 0 stars because this is totally unusable in the way that it's it. But I'm going to try to find a way to get this mounted into my overhead unit, and hopefully by the end of this video, I'll have a solution. Just want to show you the 4-port with switches installed. So this is my factory switch, and then the 2 that I'm adding. And man, I wish someone had made this video before I bought this 4-port, because I actually don't need the 4. I just thought it would be a nice extra if I ever added anything in the future. But man, it would have saved me a world of trouble if I knew I could have done all this, or all the work that it would take to put this 4-port in versus just a 3. So anyway, this is what it looks like with the switches installed. These are, by the way, these are CH 4x4 switches, some custom ones. I've got a Wii Boost. So this will turn on my Wii Boost, and this will turn on my Wi-Fi in the bed of my truck. I actually have a LAN network there behind a firewall that's connected into a directional antenna, and I can turn this on from the cab and point the directional antenna to some Wi-Fi source and get Wi-Fi off of that. Or I can also have it rigged so I can turn this on in the bed of my truck where I've got my computer monitor. So anyway, this is a nice setup here, just getting this integrated into that overhead panel. So real quick, I want to talk to you about the 2-port and 3-port versions of the Meso Customs overhead panel, and why you may want to go with that and find another place to put your 4th button, or just leave it blank like I was planning to. I actually don't even need 4 buttons myself, and it's really frustrating that this doesn't have any mounting options. But if you look at the back of this, the stock one that came in here, this has tabs on the bottom, so those fit into the panel, and then they have clips at the top. And so these clips then snap into place. And if you have the 2-port Meso Customs model, you can actually install that without any modification to your head unit. If you get the 3-port version, that has the tabs and the clips as well, so that will snap in okay, but you do have to cut and modify your head unit. But like I said, it actually mounts. I'm so disappointed this has nothing like that at all. No tabs, no mounts, anything like that. So let's see if I can get that thing working. But I'm going to show you what I've done on the overhead unit, because I already destroyed it by the time I realized this has absolutely no way to mount it. So here's my overhead unit. I've already been working on it, and that's only after I cut everything out that I realized there's no way to mount that 4-port, and that's why I started making this video. So I'm already far along, but I'm going to explain to you what I've done so far so you can learn. Originally, I had this in place. So I have my single port, and the way I got that out was I have some trim removal tools, and I was able to pry across the top. There are clips up at the top, and you can get those loose. But unfortunately, the end of this was sticking through this hole, and I couldn't pry this out to get those tabs on the bottom cleared. And the hole in the back was too small for me to reach in and undo these clips. There's a clip on the top and a clip on the bottom, and you push them in, and this whole button pushes out of that console. I couldn't get that button out because the hole was too small, so I ended up just prying this out, and I bent one of the tabs here. No big deal, because I don't ever plan on using that again anyway. And once I had that out, this will apply. If you have the 2-port version, you won't need to do any further modification. You won't have to do any modification at all. If you have the 3-port version, there is a bridge going across this top that you're going to have to cut out, as well as cutting out this back, because there's only 2 holes there, and you'll have to trim that. The other thing you'll have to do on the 3-port and the 4-port version is to trim this edge here. It extended out about double the width that you can see right here, and I had to trim that out right there as well. So I started off cutting this bridge that spanned right here. So there's just a bridge on this top part, and I ended up cutting that with a hacksaw, one like this. You can get this at any home improvement store. And I used this rather than a Dremel because I had a lot more control over here. I didn't want to damage my top by having a Dremel, accidentally nick something. And in addition, I also put some blue painter's tape on this top edge and on this edge right here, so that as I'm cutting, if I ever rubbed against this, I would rub on the tape and not damage the trim on the top right here. So I cut through this bridge right here, and then the next thing that was in place was where the sunroof button normally is, and on mine it's just a panel, and there's another wall right here on this side. So that was actually not just a bridge, but a wall that extended all the way down to the bottom, and I had to cut that out to get access to this panel right here. So this was a pain in the butt to get out. You can see I totally mangled it. Basically, I believe this was put in, inserted through the back, placed in position, and then this back was put in place, and then it's plastic welded everywhere. Now you could potentially take this entire back off and redo the plastic welds later, but I didn't want to do that, so I couldn't get this thing out. I was looking through all the holes. I couldn't figure out how to do it. If you look, it's basically these huge plastic tabs, and the only way that fit in there was putting it in before they welded it in place. And the only way to get it out is basically I took some pliers, grabbed the edge, and literally just pried it out and got rid of that thing. So with that out of the way, the next thing I encountered was the back of this had this huge cross in place, and so that cross basically kept that panel from being pushed in. And so I had to cut around as I'm cutting these holes here on this side. We'll go over in the back side of this, and I'll show you what I did there real quick, but just so you can see, I had to trim around the edges of this cross, and I actually had trimmed a little bit too much on the side over here, but we got this. I got this piece out. So this side I used my hacksaw to carefully trim this, but on the back where no one's going to see it and I didn't really care, I went ahead and used a Dremel back here to trim this out. If you notice, there's a little tiny lip you can see right here and right here. These are where the original factory buttonholes are. I trimmed just a little bit further outside of those, and then you do have to trim quite a bit off of the top to make clearance for the buttons for the Meso Custom panel, because they are up a little bit higher than the factory ones. I trimmed a little bit off the side here as well, and then I cut all the way in over here. For some of this, it was hard to get in with the Dremel because of the angle, And so I ended up doing a Dremel for some of it and hacksaw for the rest of it. And then once I was done cutting all of this out, I ended up taking a file, just doing regular metal file, and I used that to kind of smooth all these edges. Because if you're using a Dremel, you're going to get a lot of melted plastic over here. You can pry that off, and then I used the file to kind of smooth everything down, give me some nice smooth edges there and everything, so it's not all harsh and prickly. But that is the status that I'm in right now. Like I said, I'm beyond the point of no return. Start off cutting a bridge here, cutting the wall here, prying out this metal plastic, flipping it over, and cutting a larger hole here. And now that all that's done, this does fit into place. But if you notice, mine is actually, if you can see it here, mine's actually bowing up a little bit right here because this is the Meso Customs unit is a little bit too wide. So I'm going to have to sand this down a little bit right here on the edge so that this fits in without bowing up like that. So now the problem with this, since there's no mounting tabs, there's no clips, there's nothing in here, it looks like this is fit in place and looks like it's all good, nice and solid, except it's not. It's just held in place by the tension from this thing being a little too big. So if you were to go and push a button, you see it'll push back down in there. So I need something to keep this in place over here on this side. This side does have this little shelf right there that fits on. So I think to fix this right hand side, I'm probably going to glue on probably something back over here on the corner. I'll get this positioned right and get like some little block of plastic or something like that glued into this back wall. I'll have to play with that and see. That, I think, if I do that, should keep this in place so that pushing buttons doesn't push this in. Now the other problem I'm going to have is that as you're driving down the road, this could potentially fall out. And because this is going to be hanging down from overhead, I don't want this falling out. So I do not know what I'm going to do yet to get this in place. The simple thing would be to have some tabs that come up, but I don't know how to get this in place with tabs. If you remember on the original version, this has tabs on the bottom that you slip in, and then the top has clips that then snap into place. So I can't unfortunately do anything like that because Meso Customs didn't print that already on their units. So I'm going to have to figure out something myself to get this mounted in the back and keep it in place but still be able to mount it in. The other option I thought about doing was possibly gluing this in, but there's quite a bit of a gap between this Meso Customs unit and the wall, and it's a really thin border that I'm going to be able to glue to, and I really don't want the glue visible through here, so I'm going to try that as a last resort if I can't figure out anything else, but hopefully I'll be able to do something that'll keep this clipped in. I may just do tabs on just the bottom or just the top and see if that works out, and I'm going to try a few things out. I'm not going to video them. I'm just going to try them, and then I'll post the results and let you know what I tried that worked out. So wish me luck. All right, so I've been sanding on this. I got to tell you, this Meso Customs plastic is really, really tough to work with. I was sanding this off. If you remember, it was a little too tight on the side over here, so I sanded it off, and it turns out that actually wasn't the problem. So just so you don't make the same mistake I did, it was fitting in really tight. It's actually just a tiny bit loose now. All the lines are kind of the same, so I'm kind of glad I sanded it off. But the culprit was this shelf right here. I hadn't cut that down enough, and so it was catching on this very first edge right there. And so that was actually what was causing this thing to bow up. And so I had to sand that thing back or file it back just a little bit, and now this thing fits in really good. So I've been looking at something to put over here. I was going to try to find a piece of plastic that I could just glue in place over there so that, as I was indicating, we have that shelf right there I could set in, and then I would put a shelf on the other side, and that would fit in over there. But I'm trying to find a piece of plastic small enough and thin enough so I don't run into the same problem with this lip catching right there. And I think I found a solution right here. So this is the old single panel, and looking at it, this fits right here. So if you notice, the edge has a little lip on it. See if we can get that in focus here. So the edge has just a little tiny lip, and that little tiny lip happens to fit right there just perfectly. All right, so here we go. I cut this side off right there. This is going to be a really nice shelf. It's going to fit right up in there. You can see that. So that shelf, that little L bend right there will fit perfectly right there. I think this is going to work out. Finally, something working out right on this project. And so where this is going to go, it's going to be right in here on this side. So it's going to be a shelf, just like the shelf we have right here that this side sets on. So I'm going to put this over here, and that's going to be a shelf for this right side, so that when you push buttons, it won't be able to push in because of the shelf here and the shelf on this side. So I think that should work. We're going to give that a shot. So the only thing of note here is that this is curved very slightly, and in addition, the plastic here has a very slight raised area right here where my finger is. So the only point of contact is going to be right there on this little raised area. I'm just going to super glue that in place, and I hope it will hold. If not, I'll come back and do some thicker construction adhesive or something that will fill in these gaps and get this in here fixed solid. But I'll have to set that overnight, and I frankly just want this to be done with. But here we are. So it's going to go like this, and what's nice with that piece of plastic is I can tilt it as needed for this. So that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll come up a tiny bit here. So that's flush. That's flush in that corner. So this is probably a good spot for it right there. All right, so there we go. I just glued it in place on the side there. That super glue bonded really fast. I didn't have much time to move it around. But what do you know? I think that that fits in there really nice. Should be able to push the buttons now without this pushing through. And that super glue probably should hold pretty well. We'll see how that works once I get everything in place and start pushing buttons if it pops out. Like I said, I may have to do some better adhesive, but super glue usually does pretty good on gluing plastics together, so should work out well. Now I just need to figure out some way to keep this from popping out as I'm driving down the road or falling down. And I may just try to wedge it in place. I may try some Velcro. I'm going to try a few things, and I'll get back to you and let you know what I discover. So I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I think I've come up with a solution. I'm going to reuse this piece again. I'm going to cut off another slice of this, and I'm going to stick it, glue it right in this top ridge right there. So I'm going to glue it in that top ridge, so this bottom channel right here will still have space under it. I'm going to have that, just a little wedge of that glued in. Should be in the really solid plastic to plastic. Some super glue should be really good. And then that way I can run a zip tie underneath that channel right there, and I'm just going to drill a hole there, drill a hole right here, and then run the zip tie underneath that plastic and have it come out these holes and just zip tie it in place. The other thing that will do, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a very slight bow in this still. So I thought that was caused by the this pushing out and bending it up, but actually it's been manufactured. Again, another manufacturing problem with this is it has a very slight bow there, and if I put that zip tie in, that should be just enough to pull that down and get it nice and flush. And if I ever need to take this out, all I have to do is, pull this out, cut the zip tie in the back, and do whatever I need to do, and then I can put this back in place just with another zip tie. So I think that's going to work. I'm hoping that this should be strong enough to keep this all in place when I super glue a little piece of plastic to kind of make a bridge right there. I'm hoping that will work out. So I'm going to try that next. We'll see if that works out, and I'll let you know. All right, so here's what I've got so far. Made this piece of plastic right here. Fit it so it fits in nice and snug right there. It's actually a little bit looser than I wanted it to be, but that's going to make this nice bridge right there. I'm going to super glue the sides in all along the sides, and probably a little dab on the top just to keep it in place. And that zip tie is going to go through the center channel right there. and a zip tie up onto the top of that with a couple of holes I drilled. So I'm gonna get this super glued in and get this installed and see if this works. All right, so here we go. This is not elegant, but I've got that piece super glued in. It's got a nice little bridge right there now. Put 6 drops of super glue underneath it. This is curved, so these corner ones or these edge ones are not making that much contact. So I went ahead and put 6 drops of super glue on top. This does seem pretty solid. I don't think that's going to pop out. And then on this piece right here, I just made 2 little notches right there, two little grooves. I just basically took my smallest screwdriver bit, drill bit, and drilled like 3 holes next to each other, and then just kind of hollowed out the middle there. So now the plan is I'm going to have a zip tie. It's going to go through here, then go through the bridge, pop out this side right here, and then zip tie in. So this is, I forget what size this is. It's probably about, looks like maybe an 8-inch zip tie. It's roughly the same size as the top of this. So let's see if this works. This is my first time fitting this together. So zip tie needs to come in here first. It's going to be kind of a pain to take out, but like I said, I will probably never take this out, so I shouldn't really have to worry about it. So let's zoom out a little bit here so we can see what's happening. So I have the zip tie through that top slot. I'm then feeding it through the bridge here. I'm going to come back over here and feed it through this other slot right there. There we go. So this is fitting in nice. That's fitting in nice. Zip tie goes through here. I can pull it nice and snug, so that's still not pulled down quite enough for my liking, because I'm kind of anal about stuff like that. And yep, that looks really good. That is in there solid now. Check that out. All right, really good. I am happy with that. This is such a screwed up solution, but what's nice, this zip tie is not blocking any of the ports. 1 zip tie is all I need to keep it up in there. I have that ledge on the side over here that I glued in. I think this is going to work. I just need to trim off that tail and get this thing installed. Finally, I'm done with this. This was way more work than I thought. And Meso Customs, shame on you for producing this thing without any way to mount it. You should be embarrassed, frankly. All right, there we go. I'm going to get this mounted and show you what it looks like. Real quick, I'll show you something that I've picked up. This is from Tacoma Beast. So this right here, you can actually plug in, and it has these connectors. I think I may have bought 1 or 2 extras. And these will then plug in here on the back of these CH 4x4 things, and that will give me the daylight running, or give me nighttime mode, where if my lights are on, the Wi-Fi lights up, and then when you push the button, it runs through my relay in the back and turns on the icon button in the back. So I don't have to cut any factory wiring, which I hate doing, and I can use this just to patch in these cables. So I'm going to get this installed and we'll see what it looks like. So one issue I did find here is that the plug, actually both of these plugs over here, actually interfere with putting the factory harness back in. This is actually my differential one, so that's grooved and I can fit it through here. This is my blank that I actually didn't need. I could have done a 3-port instead. I'm so upset. But I need to take that one back out before I can put this factory harness back in place. Once that's in place, it looks like everything should clear just fine, but I need to get that back in place. Everybody, so here it is installed. Actually looks pretty good. I can push the buttons. That one's a blank. It's my Wi-Fi. I have that hooked up in the back. This is my phone booster. It's not hooked up yet, but everything seems to work. Seems to be in here really solid. I've been driving around with it for about 2 days now. Haven't had any issues with it, so I think that setup worked pretty well. I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope I've convinced some of y'all that only need 3 to just get the 3 plug-in, and those of you who are getting the 4, I hope you learned a way to get this installed. It is a hack way to do it, but Meso Customs doesn't provide any instructions for this, so I had to do the best I could. I hope y'all benefit from my experiences.